Oh, we're brushing the cobwebs off and blowing the dust and dusting off the microphones for this week. It has been a month, more than a month.
A month of our lives.
It has, because you've been just here, there, and everywhere, and then when you were back, I was away, and it's just been a bit of a nightmare, isn't it?
It has really, exactly. It's,
Life's run away with us.
Life has run away with us, but we're back now.
We're back.
And the sun's shining. It's a glorious summer day here in my garden.
22 degrees, I think the car said on the way over.
That's
which isn't
right.
bad, is it?
How
Summer's
marvellous.
finally here in the UK. We'll see how long it lasts. Do you reckon we'll get a week?
I think we might do, or
Yeah.
maybe 24 hours.
We'll
Just
see.
how it
It'll be
goes.
raining tomorrow.
But it's great, really. I mean, here we are. We're sitting in our shorts.
We are. We both. I opened the door and you greeted me in your shorts. And
Exactly, my manly thighs.
The sight to behold.
I mean, it is such a shame, dear listeners, that you're unable to see us in our shorts.
I know. We've got our lovely legs out.
Our lovely
Ankles
legs.
showing.
Ankles showing, knees showing. Obviously very pale because
Yes,
there hasn't been
very,
much
very pale.
sunshine.
The Irish skin isn't doing me any favours. You
No,
could probably,
it doesn't
you know,
really, does it? No, nothing
you'd probably
does you.
blind people with these legs here, I think. But yeah, actually, my lovely beige shorts sort of fade nicely into my pale legs here.
They
don't
do, actually,
You can't
yeah.
really tell the difference.
Dear listeners, he is a portrait in beige.
I am. I'm
You get
very beige
beige,
today.
and you know, I can't tell you.
Well, it beats your grey.
It's like looking at a glass of ginger ale. It really is.
That's me. With a bit
And,
ginger on top and beige everywhere else.
Exactly. And of course, I mean, I've got my manly legs here. You know, I always had footballers' legs. I really did. Somebody said you got footballers' legs.
I used to be told I'd make a good rugby player because I'm like short and stumpy.
Really?
Yeah, I remember being in school and then being like, I was like, I don't think so.
Yeah, I was just saying they used to put me in the scrum and it didn't work out really.
No, I didn't really know what I was doing.
I remember they put me in the scrum. I don't know whether we've had this before, viewers, but basically, listeners. But basically, when I was at school, you had to go out. You had to go out and on the field, hail, snow, or blow. There was none of this sort of
No wet plays.
none of this kind of the PE teacher can't keep warm. Let's go in the gym. None of that. And we used to play rugby in the northeast. And one week we do rugby league rules, and the next week we do rugby union, which is so confusing because I think one has got more players than the other and everything.
Oh, I have no idea.
And I used to be bored out of my tinies. I was always the last person to be chosen for the team, you know. Anyway, I was thrown into the scrum one time, and that was a bit of an interesting experience.
Well,
Probably
cheek
ruined
to
me for
cheek
that.
is how they used to teach us. You'd put your face, the cheek of your face against the butt
That's
cheek
right.
of them in front of you. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Very interesting.
Yeah.
And cheek to cheek. And there was this slightly overweight kid called Tommy Duckers was his name. I don't know what happened to him. He's a nice guy and everything. And he fell. You know, when you're in the scrum, you know, disintegrates or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
And he fell on my right arm.
Oh.
I was going around like Quasimodo for about 2 weeks. You know. I thought, this is far too rough a game for me. I don't want to do this. I used to have, I mean, this is years ago, I used to have a really good excuse because I'd had my appendix out at the end of junior school. And in those days, it was a week. You were in hospital for a week.
Really?
You had a really big scar and all that business.
Blimey.
So I said to the PE teacher, I've had my appendix out, you know. And, well, you go and stand over there.
Yeah,
so that's
yeah.
how I used to do it.
I had a similar accident when I was in primary school.
Oh, you had an accident, did you?
I did.
What, did you
That
wet
wasn't
the
my
floor?
fault. Oh, who do I call?
You wet the floor, folks.
No, do you know what I did? I was at church and it was young, and I think we were outside. The church was like attached to a nursery, and we shared like the play area after church. And I thought, wouldn't it be great if I just climbed over the fence? So there was like a fence, and then you ended up like round the back of like the hall where like the scouts hut were, but there was like a fence and a gate. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool to just jump over the fence? So I put my hand over the fence, jumped down, and literally my hand was full of splinters, like my whole palm of my hand. But it got me out of rugby at school for like months because you just have to wait for them to.
Yes.
Like I did the whole saltwater thing, bathing in there for like a week and just hoping
dear
they
me.
fought. But you just sort of had to wait for them to sort of dissolve into your skin. It was a bit.
So that was your only attempt at doing Mission Impossible, was it?
Never again. Yeah. I'm not quite athletics and stunts. Yeah, that didn't happen after that. Welcome to Hello Dear, the podcast where age is just a number and opinions come with a touch of laughter. I'm Kieran, the young perspective on the twists and turns of life today.
And I'm Neil, the seasoned voice of yesterday, with a flair for drama and a love for life. Together we're here to chat about everything under the sun, from the latest trends to the timeless tales of our own experiences. So, grab your favourite beverage, get comfy, and join us as we explore the complexities of life.
So, travel is what we've said today's episode's going to be about. You've just come back from silly amounts of holidays ruining the planet with all your carbon emissions. And I'm about to do the same after you for the next 6 months, off to Italy and potentially Australia. We just thought we'd have a little chat about travelling and what we enjoy, what we don't enjoy, horror stories.
I'd like to emphasise that they were carbon emissions. They weren't other emissions.
Well, not that you're going to admit to anyway.
No, exactly.
Have you offset your carbon? Did you pay the little bit extra when you booked your flights?
Must have. I don't know. I just put my credit card in and hope for the best.
Take my money.
You know, it's interesting because I've just had the very fortunate situation where I've made 2 trips abroad in a plane within a very close time. I went to Canada to see the family and to see my godson for 10 days, and I was back for a week, and then I was out to Hungary for the second time this year. So the 2 situations have come in close proximity, the 2 holidays, if you like, and I was invited back to Hungary since February because there was this children's theatre festival. Otherwise, I wouldn't have gone back probably till next year. And it was a festival at a certain time. You know, I may have ended up, you know, if the festival had been a bit later in the year, it would have been better for me.
Of
really,
course,
I think,
yeah.
You know,
yeah.
But anyway, so we did the whole thing. I did the whole thing together, and it's been very interesting. I actually surprised myself at how confident I was, particularly on the first trip, because I did 6 flights within 10 days.
It's a lot of travelling.
It's a lot of travelling. And different time zones, because I was up in northern British Columbia, which is an hour ahead of the Vancouver Island where my family are, and all of that, plus all the the time difference with coming from here. So it's all you're all over the shop, you're forever changing your watch, you know. And it was really interesting because these short hop flights, people are very friendly. Certainly Canadians are. And I found that really, really refreshing, that they'll just start to talk to you.
We're such a miserable country, the UK, aren't we? Unless
we
you're
are
up
really,
north, like here, London, south of England, like you may as well be talking to brick walls, or you wouldn't dare speak to anyone in case they were to, knife you or something these days. You never know.
I had some very interesting chats with people. On my way there, I went to Calgary Airport, and I had to change to Kelowna, and I had about an hour and a half. And the usual thing that WestJet do is basically they change the gate, and it's
last minute.
A hell of a long bloody walk. I literally just sat down. When I had to change your gate to A6, so I had to walk all the way over there. And I got talking to this girl, and she was from Manitoba, and she was visiting her boyfriend in Kelowna, and then she just got talking to me.
Nice, yeah. You're probably at that age now where you can get the special assistance people in their little cars and they can drive you. You should. Why not?
Yeah.
We did it once when we went to Australia with my great uncle, and it was the best thing ever because they just drove you as soon as you landed. They just drove you to your next for the transfer. They just drove you in the little car. It was great. Honestly, I'd highly recommend it.
This is where we part company, listeners.
Look, I'm just saying, use your age to your benefit.
Just suggesting
if you can,
You're just suggesting it.
I'm suggesting it, but if you can get a lift for free,
Yeah,
do it.
True. It's true.
You know.
But it was really interesting because obviously people travel a lot in Canada in the plane because of the distances.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's like the same in Australia to go anywhere.
And we don't have as much of that over here.
Well, we do now. The train prices have got so extortionate.
Exactly,
People are flying to Manchester instead. But yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah,
it's true. And it's I did find it very refreshing that people just started talking to you. On the way back when I was going home, I flew from Victoria on Vancouver Island to Calgary. WestJet, their hub is Calgary. You have to go out through Calgary all the time. And there was this lady started talking to me. And we started talking about, why I was in Victoria and all that. And I mentioned that I was really interested in an artist called Emily Carr. She's one of the pioneer Canadian artists of, she lived from about 1879 to the 1940s or something. She was very, very, and also she was kind of a feminist, in her own way, and a fantastic artist. And we just got talking about that. The next thing you know, the hour and a half was over.
Yeah.
People just being genuinely friendly. And and on the way over, I remember I went from Kelowna to Calgary and Calgary to Victoria and all that. And from Kelowna to Calgary, there was this guy sitting next to me, and he was an engineer. And he was talking about his engineering project and how he's away from home a lot and all that business. I mean, it fascinates me, really. Yet here in England, we don't talk to each other much.
No, I don't know. I think it's different up north. I think people are more inclined to talk to you up north. There's more of a sense of community. But down here, it's really hard to connect with. We've just had new neighbours move in next door. The people who were living there now rent the house out, and it's the second set of people we've had living in there. But we've said hello, and that's about it. I don't know their names. I don't know what they do for a living, and it's kind of like. I feel like you end up in more battles with your neighbours these days, rather than if you're friendly with them, you could work things out. People don't do that anymore.
It's sad, very sad.
It is sad, yeah.
I mean, where my aunt used to live, she's passed away now, in Sydney. It's a small town. People talk to each other. They say hello as you're walking along the street. Now, a lot of them are elderly. Yeah. Say good morning, how are you?
I feel like you only get that in this country when you go for a walk or if you've got dogs. Because dog walkers will know each other and they'll say hello to each other. Or if you're out walking at the weekend, Mum and Dad always say hello to people when they're out for walks. But other than that, that's that community sense.
There was a lot of that during lockdown.
Yeah, I think because people missed the connection,
people did talk.
Yeah.
Are you all right? Hello, how are you?
Can I help you? Do you need me to get you anything from the shops? Blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
I mean, that was wonderful. But we're back to normal now.
Of course we are. Yeah.
Which is sad, really. We haven't learnt from it.
No.
We haven't learnt from it, which is a great shame, really. And I don't know. I seem to have this thing of because I've been over there for so many years now, quite a long time now. The first time I went over was 20 years ago. I've got to know people there. There's a guy who ran a pub, Bill, the rum runner. I used to go in there nearly every year, and we'd have a chat, and he'd talk about when he came over to England and everything. I put him in one of my short stories, actually. I put the pub in my short stories. And I hadn't been over there for 4 years, and last year I went there, and it was the week the place was closing for good. He'd been bought out, and he was in floods of tears, and I started getting all emotional for this blessed pub, which is thousands of miles away.
Yeah, but it has a personal connection to you, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I seem to have this way of chatting to people and befriending them in a sort of way. But I think over there that is easier than here.
People are more open to it. I think you kind of have to say, oh, excuse me, and then try and start up a conversation. They do look at you funny. They think you're trying to sell them something, or, you're trying to...
It has got easier, Kieran, getting older. Now I'm retired. I do find I have little conversations with people in Kingston down the road because obviously it's very quiet in the week. That's when I try and do my shopping.
Yeah.
I mean, why go through the hassle of those dreadful school children?
Yes. Oh,
terrible.
Tell me about it.
And you do find yourself talking to people, but maybe it's just that generational thing.
I think it probably is. Like, I wouldn't approach anyone my age if I was out and about. I didn't know.
Well, hello, dears. Neil here, just checking in. How are you doing? If you are enjoying today's episode, why not drop us a quick review on your favourite podcast platform? And don't forget to hit the follow button so you never miss an episode. We love hearing and interacting with you. We are into interaction. Follow us then on social media at Hello Dear Pod for bonus content and send us a message. Finally, if you're one of our listeners on Spotify, you can interact with our Q&As and polls, which you'll find on most episodes. All our links are in the description of this episode. Now, let's get back to it. On those flights, I mean, as I say, I did 6 in 10 days, then another 2, obviously going to and from Hungary. I did sit there as you can do, and you moan. You moan. Why am I moaning? I know it takes 8.5 hours to get to Calgary, but at the end of the day, that's 3,000 miles.
It's not a terrible journey.
You're traveling, 3,000 miles. I mean, you could not possibly do that by boat in that length of time.
Oh,
It's
weeks,
incredible,
if not months,
really.
wouldn't it?
Yeah. And again, traveling here, they're zigzagging here and everywhere. I didn't know what the mileage was on that. Hungary, it would take at least 24 hours on a train to do it.
Oh, yeah,
you could do it on a train, but and it's I think what's happened. It's happened for me, and I wonder if it's happened for a lot of other people. And listeners, do think of it yourself. The magic of flying has gone.
It's just another way of commuting now, is it?
Yeah,
not?
it is almost like a commute now, and obviously you don't get as much for your money as you used to.
No, like with everything.
They used to get the nice food and all that, and all that. Well, they do that on long haul, but no, it's not brilliant.
I wouldn't say
food.
it's nice food on long haul.
It's not brilliant in economy. It's not brilliant. But and I can remember in economy on BA, when I first started going over there to Hungary 30 years ago, you got a meal, a salady kind of meal, and drinks for free.
I think one of the flights we did, we got food.
No, you got.
Did you not get a snack or something?
Yeah, you got a snack.
But I don't think they even do that anymore.
No, they don't. No, it went from a meal to a Subway style sandwich.
Yeah,
but the drinks were free, and there's coffee and tea and all that. Now you have to pay for
everything. Yeah.
But it's not just that. I think we get a little bit jaded with these things. I can remember I was 34 years old. Well, it's about 2 years ago now. I was 34 years old.
That's the best joke you've ever told on this podcast.
There'll be more. When I start running this on my own. Solo.
The Z show.
Oh, he's preening himself now. The sunshine's come out. And I was 34 years old. I'd never been in a plane before in my life. And the first trip I took was to Canada, was to Toronto.
Really? That was the first time you ever flown?
7 hours.
Blimey.
And I was so excited by it. I everything about it. The fact I was sitting down, there was a meal that was brought to me, and there was drinks and all that. And I can remember, I had a Walkman.
Of course.
And I played my Walkman. And as we took off, I was playing my Walkman. Some kind of, I don't know, musical or music or something. Yeah, it was a musical I was playing. And it was just amazing. I've never forgotten that. And now, of course, we've got all the paraphernalia as well, don't we? We have to have the headphones.
Yes.
We have to have the Bluetooth.
Noise cancelling this. And
we have to have, your iPad or your
download
Kindle.
all your Netflix shows before you fly. And
all that business. It's very different.
But that's because flying is just mundane now. It's like getting a train. It's like it's just a way of getting from A to B. Like, there's not an excitement of flying because it's so normal now. Yeah. I mean, people use the planes to commute. Like, that never would have happened. Like,
no.
People live in France and commute to London for work, and it's such a normal thing. I live under the flight path at home it must be Gatwick, I think.
Right.
And you just see the planes going over all the time. It's so normal, and you know the sound of a plane, and it's just.
Yeah.
I think it's that kind of. It's not claustrophobia, but now it's so cramped, and they get as many seats as they can to make as much money.
Yeah.
And you're worried about leg room, especially like to somewhere like Australia.
Yeah.
And I remember
I have to have an aisle seat. I need to get up and go to the loo.
Yeah,
that kind of thing,
and I remember on the way to Australia, I got stuck at the window, and the two next to me had fallen asleep, and I was like, "Oh God!" No, that was to Japan, and I was like,
"He's travelled around, folks.
I've been around a little bit, but I don't mind going out on long hauls. It's coming home that just makes, for some reason, the flights seem twice as long as what they actually are coming back.
They do.
It's
and I had a
horrible.
4-hour layover in Calgary, which made it even longer.
We did, on the way back from Australia, we were Malaysian Airlines, and I think we had a 6-hour stopover on the way home.
Oh, gosh.
And we got in like 4, and it was just there was nothing to do but sleep, but you'd already slept a bit, and you didn't want to mess up your routine for the hangover, the jet lag on the way back, and that was just awful.
Yeah, it is that business of it's lost its novelty, and it's romance. It's excitement, really, unless it is your first flight.
You say that. There's been a lot of Netflix shows at the minute of films that people meeting on planes.
Really?
I've watched 2 recently, yeah.
Right.
Oh, I can't. One had a silly plane or flight pun in it. But they were quite good, like silly little rom-coms.
Yeah.
They're like meeting on a plane, but like they were good,
Well, that's never happened to me.
But I really enjoyed it. It was about an art dealer or something on Netflix recently. And it's always an American meeting a British man on the flight, either to America for the career or to England for the career. This was an American
You could
woman
almost
meeting
write it by numbers, couldn't you, really?
Yes, yeah, it was just classic stuff. But, I love a good little soppy rom-com. Nothing wrong with that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It is. Speaking about movies, I mean, it's quite interesting. I used to try and watch the movies on the plane. Though, I don't know, as I say, as you say, about the seating, the screen I had was too close to me, really.
Yeah, they're not, yeah.
They're not enough. And fatal, this is fatal, when you're actually flying at night, overnight on the way home. I start looking at other people's screens. And obviously they're silent.
Yeah.
And I start working out what's going on with the movie, I look at 2 or 3 of them down the aisle, and I end up not, and I'm not looking at my own screen. I mean, I could have listened to my music, or I had a book to read. I had plenty to do, but I ended up looking at other people's screens, and then you can't get sleep.
Yeah, of course.
You can't get sleep.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's hard to sleep on a plane anyway.
Yeah, it is hard,
especially in economy. Like you're not, you're sitting upright, and
it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I can remember back in 2019, I was coming back. And the old film The Godfather was on somebody's screen, which I'd seen umpteen times before anyway. And I just watched it silent, on silent. It's very interesting. People's acting, you can see.
Well, you see it more because you can't hear.
Yeah. And this time there was that episodes of one woman, she was a bit odd actually. She had these episodes of Fleabag.
Still never seen that,
I've not seen it, when she falls to the Catholic priest, which is played by Andrew Scott. I think was slumming it that night. Anyway, and she had that on. Then she was watching something else about a priest. I think she had a thing about priests, actually. But anyway, they're all sitcoms or whatever, or short things.
Yeah.
I can remember 20 years ago, again, I was on a long haul. I think this time was San Francisco.
Because you've travelled a fair bit.
I have travelled a fair bit, yeah, for a boy from Redcar. And I remember on the way out, I actually did sit with this notebook and a copy of Romeo and Juliet. This is before Spider-Man, Tom Holland even got anywhere near it. Near it. He was probably in his sort of baby grows then. Well, what's the difference playing Spider-Man?
Oh, stop it! Be nice now. Now you're just jealous. Only, Now you're just jealous.
And he's coming over later for some help with his
I'm sure
playing Romeo.
Yeah.
God knows he needs it. But anyway, there I was, and I thought, well, I've got 10 hours. What am I going to do? I had my copy of Romeo and Juliet. I had a big notebook, and I planned the whole production of Romeo and Juliet, which we did for the Millennium. I planned it all the way through. And I felt wonderful afterwards.
This is where being a creative comes in really handy for long journeys. And our imaginations and what we can do to occupy ourselves in a couple of hours. It is nice to be able to kind of just
write a story or
just kind of
poem or
like I said, people watch and I love people watching. Whenever I go and get a coffee, I'll always sit at one of those high tables round by the windows.
Yeah,
and I'll just watch because it's so interesting coming up with stories for people. You wonder where they're coming from.
An airport.
Yeah, exactly. I love it. I love people watching.
I love watching the way that the stewards and hostesses, the way they treat people.
I like watching. I watch, when they do the safety announcement and they're all down the plane, and you kind of watch and you see how they all do it slightly differently.
Yes, yeah.
Or the action's slightly different.
That's right.
It's funny the things that It shows you how mundane flight travel is that we're now looking for.
I don't think it's a glamorous job.
Being
at
an
all.
Air steward.
No, or hostess or whatever. It's not a glamorous
job. But you get to
job.
travel the world.
You do, but I don't think they have the layovers that they used to have, the stopovers.
But they still get. I've known a few flight attendants, and they still get some very nice holiday. I knew he had 5 days in Bali.
Oh, really?
As a stopover, because whatever flight it is.
Maybe I should get myself a job as an air.
Maybe you should. You'd be great. You'd be a great air steward. No. I don't know if you're tall enough though. You have to be a certain height, don't you?
Oh, shut up.
Oh, I wouldn't be. I'm not criticising you.
That's true, actually. I imagine you do. Well, you have to wear high heels.
You'd be able to reach the... Yeah, you just have to wear your heels for flights.
Yeah,
I'm sure that would be comfortable, wouldn't it? Yeah, the overhead lockers.
I wouldn't be able to reach that, I remember. There's one on an airline. I think it's Northwest, actually, I flew. And he's obviously in his 50s at that time, this guy, this steward. And he had this way of purring. I've never forgotten this. Well, can I help you? All like that, Let's just lay back a bit and we'll get you a drink. Honestly, it was like some kind of old-fashioned advert, TV commercial. He kept this up. Amazing. He had a kind of low, purring voice,
Wow. That's
amazing.
kind of, yeah. I'd love him to read an audiobook to me or something.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we were on, Sam and I were on the plane back from Budapest in February, the first trip. And there was a guy on there, and he was like something out of children's television, like a pantomime. Well, hello, we'd like you to invite you aboard. Now, we're just going to do our safety check. He was full of it. From the minute we walked, hello, how are you?
I do wonder whether they're like...
And leaving, it was the same, well, goodbye, we hope we'll see you again, to everybody. He was really overdoing it.
Do you think that's his personality, or do you think that's him just making the job more fun?
Well, we worked out, because you did mention, we worked out that he was in charge of the cabin that day.
Oh,
and I think he was making the most.
And he was sort of like, yes,
making the most.
I'll run the show. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Whereas his companion was pursed lips all the way through.
I'm sure probably like, I've been stuck on a flight with it, because they don't work with the same people, do they? It's always different people.
No, I guess.
And you can imagine seeing him on the road and going, it's gonna be a long flight.
Working with fake tan.
I'm sure they've all got nicknames for each other.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure they do. Yeah.
Well, they're meant to be quite frivolous, aren't they, cabin crew? They're meant to get around, and there's all sorts of affairs and sleeping with pilots and.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah. Never float your boat.
Well, exactly.
That's why the gays are so attracted to the job, I suppose.
I think it's because partly we are very conscientious. We're very good at being. We're people.
Yeah, we are, aren't we? Yeah.
We are, and also quite caring.
Well, can be.
Can be.
Yeah, there's some nasty gays out there.
Yeah, but I think that's why.
Yeah.
And let's remember that there are a lot of gay people in caring professions, teaching, nursing,
a lot of nurses, yeah.
And working with people, social workers, working in old folks' homes.
That's a good point.
I mean, there is that side to us, and I think it does take a special person to do the job properly.
Yeah.
It's very difficult because you get troublesome customers and.
So that's the end of this episode. We'll be back when we're back. Who knows? It might not be next week. It might be 2 weeks. It might be 3. See how
I think it'll be next week, definitely.
You reckon we'll get
I'm
one
in that
next
mood
week?
now.
Oh, you're in.
I've got my feet firmly on the ground.
He's back
I'm
into it.
I'm back in the
listeners.
UK, and how? So we hope to see you next week. Hopefully.
Yes, we hope to see you next week.
We hope to see you next week. Hope that's a bit stupid thing to say, isn't it?
Well, we'll speak to you soon.
We will speak to you very soon. Thank you for listening.